Hey guys, good evening. I hope you are having a very wonderful day. This is me, Siva Prasad, back with yet another YouTube video on our NCRT science textbook. We are doing a summary of all the NCRT science textbooks right from class 6 to class 12. So, in the previous session, we started with a discussion on class 8 NCRT science textbook. I will be giving you a brief overview of whatever we discussed in the previous class, and following that, we will be starting with a new topic today from class 8 NCRT science textbook. The course is being presented by me, Siva Prasad. I teach live on an academy platform. You can check out my courses and all the links are provided in the description of this particular video. So without wasting much time, I'll just give you a recap of whatever we did in the previous lesson. We started our discussion on microorganisms. I told you how there are 4 groups of microorganisms: bacteria, fungi, protozoa and algae. Then we had a discussion on viruses. Then we talked about where these microorganisms live and survive. Then we talked about friendly microorganisms. Then we talked about how microorganisms are useful for making vaccines and all. And following that, we talked about harmful microorganisms, which I called as pathogens. And these pathogens are capable of causing diseases in human beings, animals, and plants. Following that, we had a discussion on communicable diseases and various kind of diseases. I told you about the causative microorganisms, which kind of disease is caused by which kind of particular organism. Then following that, we discussed about antimicrobial resistance, about superbugs, and what are the reasons behind the fact that we are developing this antibiotic resistance. So that's what that was discussed in the previous video. In case you guys have missed that particular lesson, I would highly encourage you to go back and watch the same. Alright, so today I'm going ahead, we are going to talk about natural and synthetic fibers. What do you mean by fibers? Fibers, remember, these are what we are using for making cloths and all. Right? There are some natural fibers. Natural fiber means they are directly obtained from plants or animals. Synthetic fiber means they are synthesized by chemical treatment. They are man-made, right? By chemical treatment, we are making these fibers, right? I'll give you a lot of examples today so that you are able to understand. Natural fibers, remember example, we have cotton. From cotton plant, we have wool that you obtain from sheep. Silk, that is by rearing of silkworm, it is called as sericulture. Right? Sericulture is basically rearing of silkworm for the production of silk, right? Okay, so these are various examples of natural fibers. They are obtained from plants or animals. This is what makes them natural fibers. The synthetic fibers, on the other hand, they are made by human beings, right? They are chemically manufactured by human beings. That's why they are called as synthetic or man-made fibers, all right? Let us talk about different types of synthetic fibers. Obviously, you already know about cotton, wool, silk, etc. So there's no point in explaining them further. What you need to understand is about synthetic fibers. I will be talking about a few fibers. Remember, crop-related concepts have been tested in the 2020 examination quite a lot. So anyway, let's talk about different types of synthetic fiber. We have something called as rayon. This is a fiber that has property similar to that of silk. Often you will see this rayon is called as artificial silk. Right? Why? Because the property resembles that of silk, right? Property is similar to that of silk. This fiber, remember, it was obtained by chemical treatment of wood pulp, right? You take wood pulp, you chemically treat them. What you get is called as rayon, right? Hence, remember this. This is also this fiber, not fiber. Fiber is also called as artificial silk. I'm sorry, I wrote it, but yeah, here you go. Nylon. Obviously, nylon ropes, etc. You have definitely used in your life. That is also an example of synthetic fiber, right? Nylon, remember, it is prepared from coal, water, and air. This is the first fully synthetic fiber that was created, right? This was the first synthetic material that we created. It was basically nylon, all right? Next, we have something called as polyester, right? This is a fabric that is used for making a lot of clothes. You might have seen a lot of clothes that are known for remaining crisp, right? They are easy to wash. They are even advertised as wrinkle-free and all, right? These are polyester. Polyester is basically yet another kind of synthetic fiber. This is a fabric that is made from this fiber. This does not get wrinkled easily, right? If you have polyester shirts, they don't get wrinkled so easily. They remain crisp and often it is very easy to wash them, right? This is polyester, yet another synthetic fiber. Then you see there are some sweaters, shawls or blankets that are used in winter. Many of them, remember, even though they resemble wool, they are actually not wool. Right? They are made of some other synthetic fiber. It is called as acrylic. All right. Many of these, remember, some sweaters, shawls, blankets, jackets, etc. that are used in winter. Many of them are not actually made from natural wool. Though they appear to resemble wool, though they look like wool, they are prepared from yet another type of synthetic fiber. It is called as acrylic. Okay, just try to remember this name, acrylic. Acrylic is resembling that of wool. Rayon is often called as artificial silk. Alright, I told you about fabric that is used for wrinkle-free t-shirts, etc. And then we have nylon. Right, these are some examples of synthetic fibers. Alright, talking about synthetic items, this brings us to a discussion on plastics. What exactly are plastics? Remember, you might be sitting on a plastic chair, plastic table, etc. What is special about plastic is that it is easily moldable. You can mold it into any shape that you feel like, right? It can be molded into any form, into any shape, right? Plastics, they can be recycled. They can be reused. Remember, they can be colored. You can impart any color to it. They can be melted. Plastics can be rolled into a sheet, or plastics can even be made into wires. This is what they are, so easily moldable. This is the reason plastics have such wide ranging applications in our everyday life. It is recycled, it is reused, it can be colored, you can color it. Look at the kind of chair colors, you are having so many options. It can be melted, you can roll it into sheets, you can make them into wires. This is what makes plastic very, very famous, right? There are some plastics, remember, that get deformed easily on heating, and they can be bent easily. These are called as thermoplastics, right? So if you heat those plastics a little bit also, they start to get deformed easily. They get deformed. You can bend them. You can reshape them, right? These are called as thermoplastics. For example, polythene, PVC, the one you see PVC pipes, etc., right? These are some examples of thermoplastics. These are used for manufacturing toys, combs, and various types of containers, right? These are examples of thermoplastics. On the other hand, there are some plastics which, when molded once, if you mold them once, they cannot be softened by heating, right? That means if you heat them, you are not able to mold them further, right? Thermoplastics, what happens in thermoplastics? If you provide some heat to the thermoplastics, you can easily mold them, you can bend them. On the other hand, if you see thermosetting plastics, these, once they are made, once they are molded once, after that, even if you heat them to higher temperature also, they cannot be softened easily by heating, alright? These are called as thermosetting plastics. Okay, I'll give you two examples also. One is called as bakelite, other is called as melamine. Okay, please don't correlate it with melanine. Okay, that's a different thing. This is melamine. Another one is called as bakelite. These two are examples of thermosetting plastics. Alright, thermosetting plastics means these are plastics which are molded once. If you set them once, it is very difficult for you to soften them by heating. Alright, that's why it is set. Thermosetting plastics. Okay, two examples, bakelite and melamine. Let's talk about both of them. Thermosetting plastics, remember, bakelite, it's a poor conductor of heat and a poor conductor of electricity. Okay, poor conductor, sometimes you also use this word that is called as insulator. Right, it is used for making electrical switches, handles of various utensils, etc. Okay, these are the utility of bakelite. Because it's a poor conductor, so what happens is, you can make electrical switches, right? You press the switch, you don't want to get electrocuted, no, you don't want to get an electric shock if you switch on the switches, right? So that's what the switches, etc. are made of, this bakelite, which is a poor conductor of electricity. Similarly, you see, this is your utensil, right? So you will hold the utensil from here. If this part, the black part, is a good conductor of heat, what happens? You will not be able to touch the utensil. So that is the reason this part, right? This part is made of an insulator that is called as bakelite. Alright, bakelite is a poor conductor, that's an insulator of heat and electricity. That's why it is used for making electrical switches, handles of various various utensils, etc. Then we have something called as melamine. It's a versatile material. It has wide-ranging applications, right? This is often said to resist fire. Okay, melamine is often said to resist fire, and it is believed that it can tolerate heat better than any other plastics. After all, it's a thermosetting plastic, so it can tolerate heat better than many other plastics. So that's why you see this melamine is used for actually making floor tiles. It is used for making kitchenware, right? And it is used for making fabrics that resist fire. If you see, the one that is worn by firemen, etc., it is all coated with melamine. All right. So these are used for fabric, means clothes that can resist fire. All right. So if you are working in high temperature environment, etc., this big melamine can be very useful for it in your fabric. All right. So these are some of the thermosetting plastics, bakelite and melamine. Let us take the discussion further and let's talk about the reasons for popularity of the plastics. Why is it that plastics are everywhere? Plastics have wide-ranging applications, right? Just look around, you will see at least you can name around 500 different plastic items just in a single room that you are in. What are the reasons that plastics are so popular? Remember, plastics are lightweight. So it is easy for transportation, lifting, etc. They are very very cheap, low price. Whatever is low in price, it has good demand, right? Good price, low price, right? It is easy to handle them. Matlab, see, it doesn't burn you, it doesn't leave any kind of sting, or it doesn't stick to you, etc. It is easy for you to handle for transportation or moving from one place to the other, etc. Plastics, remember, are non-reactive, right? Plastics, they don't react with water or air. If you see sodium, right, you are aware of this sodium. You see, sodium is always kept inside kerosene. Why? Because if you keep sodium in open air, it simply reacts with air and it catches fire, right? So that's what. There are many other elements, etc., that quickly react with water. But if you look at plastics, plastics are non-reactive. They don't react with water. They don't react with air, right? Then another reason, as I told you, is the moldability of the plastics. You can mold plastics into varied shapes and varied sizes. You can make big plastic items, small plastic items. You can, make them of different shapes, etc. As I told you, plastics are poor conductors of heat and electricity, right? So that means they are insulators. You can make a lot of heat resistant objects, etc. Right? For example, I just told you can use handles of various utensils, electrical switches. These are items that can be made out of plastics. All right. A material which gets decomposed through natural processes such as bacteria is called as biodegradable. Why am I discussing this? Remember, I am going to talk about plastic bags, and these are considered as non-biodegradable. So before introducing this concept of non-biodegradable, before introducing concept, I have to tell you what is biodegradable. Any material, remember, that gets decomposed through natural processes. Okay, what natural process I am talking about? I am talking about the action of the bacteria. Such processes are called as biodegradable. Alright, so that means if I have a material, it gets decomposed by bacteria, by action of the bacteria. In the previous lesson also I told you what happens when we die. There are these detritivores, there are these bacteria, fungi, etc. They start to break us down, break down the dead body, and then they release all these nutrients back into the atmosphere, back into the soil, right? So that's what I told you. So these objects that can undergo decomposition like this by the action of these bacteria through natural processes, such materials are called as biodegradable materials, right? And then there are some materials that don't get easily decomposed by natural processes, right? These are called as non-biodegradable materials, right? So let's give you some examples of that. If you see nowadays, whenever you are categorizing waste also, there are two different dustbins you get to see. One is biodegradable waste, other is non-biodegradable. So in non-biodegradable, you have all these, metal cans. For example, you're drinking Coke on those metal cans and all, right? You usually throw them in the non-biodegradable. Similarly, you have some plastic bags and all. You tend to throw them in non-biodegradable. On the other hand, if you have some paper, wood, vegetable waste, etc. These are all examples of biodegradables. So that is the reason you tend to segregate them in biodegradable waste, right? Let's just talk about different types of waste. You have peels of vegetables, fruits. These are all kitchen leftover, food leftover, etc. Remember, it takes around 1 to 2 weeks to degenerate for getting decomposed, etc. Such material, remember, it's an example of biodegradable. You have paper. Paper takes around 10 to 30 days. Paper is also an example of biodegradable material. Then we have cotton cloth. It lasts for 2 to 5 months. It is also an example of biodegradable material. Then wood, as you can see, these are all natural objects. It will take around 10 to 15 years for it to undergo decomposition. This is also a biodegradable. Then we have woolen cloths. This takes about a year, but this is also an example of biodegradable object, right? If you look at tin, aluminum, other metal cans that we are using on a regular basis, it takes around 100 to 500 years for them to disintegrate. That's why this is an example of non-biodegradable material. Alright. Then we have plastic bags. Plastic bags take several years for getting degraded, for getting degenerated, for getting decomposed. So plastic bags are yet another example of non-biodegradables. Alright. So this brings to conclusion our discussion on plastics. Let's try to move ahead and talk about a concept called as combustion. Alright, as you can see, this is a summary of class 8 NCERT science textbook. So we are switching over different topics, over different concepts, over different chapters. Alright. Next, let's talk about this concept called as combustion. Combustion is basically a chemical process in which a substance, it reacts with oxygen to give off heat. This is called as combustion. That means combustion basically means any object that is burning, right? It undergoes combustion. Any object that is burning, fuel, remember, whatever fuel you're using, it is said to undergo combustion, right? It is producing heat. It is reacting with oxygen. It is producing heat. Remember, oxygen is very crucial for you to keep a fire on, right? I will be telling you about the concept of fire extinguisher, etc., right? So that's when I will tell you how oxygen is very crucial. Supply of oxygen is very crucial for keeping the flame going. All right. So combustion is a chemical process in which substance it reacts with oxygen to give off heat. This is called as combustion. Right. A substance that undergoes combustion is called as a combustible. Right. So basically, you see fuel. Right. It's also called as fuel. Fuel undergoes combustion. Fuel lights up. Right. Fuel gets lighted up on fire. So that's what. That is why it's called as a combustible. Any item that undergoes combustion is called as combustible. Alright. The fuel, remember, it may be solid. For example, it could be coal. It could be liquid. For example, it could be petrol or diesel, or it could be gas. For example, LPG, CNG, etc. Right. These are all examples of gas. So the fuel or combustible, it can be solid, liquid, or gas. Right. In the UPSC examination, in the prelims or mains, they can just, instead of using the word fuel, they will give you combustible. Right, see, these are basic terminologies. 8th standard kids are studying this. So definitely you should be aware of what do we mean by combustible. Right, if they give you such terminologies, you get flabbergasted. Right, even though you know the answer, you might end up just ignoring this or leaving this question. That's the greatest fault when you miss out on questions that you could have easily addressed. Alright, combustible. You will be very surprised to see in 2017 in General Studies paper 1, a question on cryosphere was asked. Okay, people had a very tough time. Some of them simply left a simple question on cryosphere, easy 10 marks question, I remember, right? So you should not be flabbergasted by such terminologies, right? And remember, 8th standard kids are studying this, so there is no excuse for you to not to know such terminologies. Combustible is just another word for fuel. It undergoes combustion, right? Combustible can be solid, liquid, or gas. Sometimes light is also given off during combustion. Either, remember, it is seen as a flame or it is seen as a flame. Alright. Let's now talk about another concept. It is called as ignition temperature. Alright. Ignition temperature basically is the lowest temperature at which the substance catches fire. You have a substance. It is catching fire at 30 degrees centigrade. Below 30 degrees centigrade, it will not catch fire. Just at 30 degrees centigrade and above 30 degrees centigrade, if it catches fire, then that 30 degrees centigrade is called as ignition temperature. Okay, so that means, if you want to write it like this, temperature at which above, let's say 30 degrees centigrade, right? This will be called as ignition temperature. At this temperature, it will catch fire, right? If it is above, definitely it will catch fire. That is the minimum temperature. The lowest temperature, if it is 29.9, 29, it will not catch fire. Exactly at 30, it will catch fire. Above 30 also, it will catch fire. This 30 is the lowest temperature. The lowest temperature at which the substance is catching fire, it's called as ignition temperature. Alright. Combustible substance cannot catch fire or burn as long as its temperature is lower than its ignition temperature. You have a fuel. For example, I'll put petrol in front of you right now. It will not suddenly catch fire. Why? Because the ignition temperature is higher than the room temperature. Okay, so that's the reason. So that means if I have a combustible, if I have a fuel in front of you, it might just not catch fire. Why? Because it needs to achieve its ignition temperature, right? For example, ignition temperature is 30 degrees centigrade, but the room temperature is 25 degrees centigrade. So obviously this particular fuel, it will not undergo combustion. It will not light up, right? So that's what. So that means a combustible substance, remember, if it wants to catch fire or it has to burn, it has to reach its ignition temperature. Below, if the temperature you are providing is below ignition temperature, it will not catch fire, it will not undergo combustion. Alright. Then we have kerosene, oil, wood, etc. Remember, they don't catch fire on their own at room temperature. But if kerosene oil is heated a little bit also, it will catch fire. But on the other hand, if wood is heated a little bit, it will not catch fire. Why is this? This is because the ignition temperature of kerosene is lower than the ignition temperature of wood. So that is the reason for lighting up wood, you need to provide higher temperatures, and for lighting up kerosene oil, you require only little bit amount of temperature. Right? Hence, it is essential for substance to reach ignition temperature to burn. Unless you are providing enough temperature for it to attain its ignition temperature, you will not be able to make the substance burn. Alright, this is the concept of ignition temperature. Alright, just try to remember them. These are all technical terminologies. These will not be explained in your prelims or mains examination. If you read the current prelims and mains paper, it is very obvious that they are using a lot of jargon. I wouldn't even call them as jargon or technical terminologies, right? Alright. Let's talk about something called as inflammable substances, right? If you look at certain products, there will be this fire kind of warning given, and it would be written like this. There will be fire kind of warning, and there would be a warning that reads that this is an inflammable substance. What do you mean by an inflammable substance? Remember, there are certain substances that have very low ignition temperatures. Their ignition temperature is very low, which means they can catch fire easily. Even with a little bit of temperature also, they will catch fire. Such substances which have very low ignition temperatures are called as inflammable substances. Alright. What are the examples of inflammable substance? We have petrol, we have alcohol, we have LPG, that is liquefied petroleum gas, etc. These are all examples of inflammable substances. Okay, so that means their ignition temperature is very low. So that means they can easily catch fire. Alright. Okay. Now talking about fire, what happens suddenly? There's some fire, catches fire, etc. So you need to extinguish that fire. Let's talk about how do we extinguish fire. All of you have seen the red fire extinguisher in multiple places, right? So if you see, for fires involving electric equipment and inflammable materials like petrol, carbon dioxide is the best extinguisher. For example, if it's an electric equipment related fire, water should never be used, right? Carbon dioxide happens to be a better extinguisher of fire, right? I hope all of you know how to operate a fire extinguisher, right? So what is the concept behind using carbon dioxide? You will see that carbon dioxide, it is actually denser than oxygen. It is heavier than oxygen. So therefore, it tends to cover the fire like a blanket. Okay, let me just explain how that works. So this is your fire, it's burning. Alright, remember it is able to burn because there is supply of oxygen, right? There is supply of oxygen. As long as there is supply of oxygen, this fire keeps on burning. So what you are right now doing is you are using a fire extinguisher and you are firing carbon dioxide at this. Okay, carbon dioxide, remember, it is denser, it is heavier than oxygen. So carbon dioxide starts to sink in and oxygen starts to go, right? Oxygen is in the upper layer, carbon dioxide is in the below layer. So this carbon dioxide, as you can see, it is forming a sort of a blanket around the fire, right? There's a sort of blanket that is formed around the fire. So this blanket of carbon dioxide is actually cutting off oxygen supply to the fire, right? So that means this fire is no longer getting oxygen supply, and as I told you, if you stop oxygen supply, the fire can be extinguished. Remember, oxygen is very crucial for the process of combustion. Alright, that's why. Since contact between the fuel and oxygen is cut off, the fire is controlled. See, it is forming a blanket like this. So it is cutting off the contact between the fuel and oxygen. So then automatically the fire is controlled. Another advantage of carbon dioxide is, remember, in most cases, it does not harm the electrical equipments. So that means for fires related to electrical equipments, the carbon dioxide, the option of using carbon dioxide is a very solid. Alright? And remember, if you look at fire extinguishers, carbon dioxide is stored under very high pressure. Right? Under very high pressure, you will be able to convert carbon dioxide into liquid. Right? So that's why it is stored in the liquid form in the cylinders. But when you release the carbon dioxide from the cylinder, remember, when you're releasing it, when you're pressing the nozzle, what's happening? You're releasing carbon dioxide, so the pressure is withdrawn. So as soon as the pressure is withdrawn, the carbon dioxide turns back into it gas. It starts to expand enormously in volume and it starts to cool down. Right? It not only forms a blanket around the fire, you will see that because of this, the carbon dioxide also ends up bringing the temperature down of the fuel. Okay? So that is why, because of these two reasons, carbon dioxide is called as an excellent fire extinguisher. Alright? These two phenomena try to be better. Alright? Let's take up one more topic today. We will be talking about lightning and lightning controllers. Okay? So the lightning is quite a mystery till date. Right? During the development of thunderstorm, it is going to rain, etc. extremely, there are air currents that are moving upwards. Right? Let me draw this for you. Air currents are moving like this. Right? While water droplets are moving downwards. Okay? This is air currents. What is coming down? Water droplets are coming down. Right? Water droplets are coming down. So you see, this vigorous movement, it causes separation of charges, right? This kind of vigorous movement is taking place. So what is happening is, charges get transferred from one place to the other. This is called as separation of charges. Okay? By a process, remember, it's not completely understood even till date, right? The positive charges, they start to collect near the upper edges of the clouds. Let me show you a picture. If you see, in the upper edges of the clouds, the positive charges are getting accumulated, right? Positive charges are getting accumulated in the upper layers of the cloud. See? Right? Positive charges collect near the upper edges of the clouds. Negative charges accumulate near the lower edges. Right? If you see, These are the lower edges. यहाँ पे you are seeing negative charges have accumulated, right? There is accumulation of positive charges near the ground also. And if you look at the ground over here, in this place, there is an accumulation of positive charges. See, positive charges at the upper levels of the atmosphere, lower levels of the atmosphere is negative charge. Near the close to the ground also, you are having positive charge accumulation, right? When the magnitude of accumulated charges, they become very large. So that means when this positive charge, negative charge, etc., the magnitude becomes very high. A humongous amount of charges are accumulated near the ground and above the atmosphere, etc. What happens is the air, which is an insulator, which is a very poor conductor of electricity, it is no longer able to resist the flow of the charges, right? Usually, air is a very bad conductor of electricity. If air is a good conductor of electricity, all of us will constantly be getting electric shocks only, right? So air, which is usually a poor conductor of electricity, for a brief period of time, because there are so much amount of charges getting accumulated, for a brief period of time, air becomes a good conductor of electricity. Air which is able to resist the flow of electricity. Remember, if you are an insulator, if you are a bad conductor, you are offering resistance to the flow of electricity. Because charges have accumulated so much, you will see that air is no longer able to resist the flow of electricity, the flow of these charges, right? So finally what happens, the negative charges and the positive charges, they end up meeting, and when they meet, they produce streaks of bright light and sound. We see these streaks as lightning. Remember, this process is actually called as electric discharge. Okay, this is a technical terminology. Again, we are picking up from class 8 NCERT, so you cannot give an excuse that I don't know what is this electric discharge, etc. Alright, this process is called as electric discharge, right? So as I told you, there is separation of charges taking place. This is totally because of friction, right? Friction, why? Because water droplets are trying to move downwards, air currents are trying to move upwards. This vigorous reaction, right? This results in some kind of frictional force, which is resulting in separation of charges. Charges are getting transferred. There is separation of charges. And because of some processes, we are seeing upper edges, positive charges are accumulating, lower edges of atmosphere, negative charges are accumulating, and near the ground, positive charges are accumulated. And then remember, air, which is a poor conductor of electricity, for a brief period of time, it is no longer able to resist the flow of electricity. It is no longer able to resist the flow of charges. So finally the charges tend to flow down. When they meet, this is creating a streak that we are observing as lightning, and this entire process is called as electric discharge. Right? Let me quickly talk about a concept called as lightning conductors. You might have seen these kind of lightning conductors, like these antenna kind of things that are put on the buildings. These are an example of these are an example of lightning conductors. Okay, why do we actually put them like this? Remember, this is a device that is used to protect the buildings from the effect of lightning. So if there is a lightning, the building will not get impacted, right? A metallic rod that is usually taller than the building is installed in the walls of the building during its construction, right? This is installed even during the time of construction itself. You will see that one end of the rod, it is kept out in the air. It is kept out like this. As you can see, this end is actually the tallest part in the building, right? It is kept out in the air, and the other one is kept buried deep in the ground. Okay. So you will see this is the top part, and the other bottom is kept deep in the ground. This is the process of grounding, right? Why are you doing this? Why? Because in case of electric discharge, right? This rod is a good conductor of electricity, right? It is going to offer an easy route for transfer of electric charge to the ground, right? Electric charges, they are trying to find which is the easiest path for me, right? So this happens to be the easiest path. So automatically what happens is the electric charges during lightning and all, during electric discharge, they tend to take this path. Alright, if this is not present, remember, they might go for any other option, right? They might go for a different way for reaching the ground. Alright, so that is the reason you are actually, by installing these lightning conductors, these rods are actually providing an easier route for the transfer of electric charge to the ground. Alright, so this is the concept of lightning conductors. Alright. So long time ago, when there was a debate about religion and religion and science, finally science won over religion. When all the religious buildings, they started installing lightning conductors, right? So God was no longer saving them; it was actually science, right? As far as from protection from lightnings, etc. are concerned, all right? So that's what it was often considered. When all the religious buildings started installing these lightning conductors, it was often considered as a victory of science over religion, all right? So with this thought, let me leave you for today. In the next class, we will be continuing our discussion on class 8 NCERT science textbook. So as you know, my name is Siva Prasad. You can search for me on the Unacademy platform. I teach live on Unacademy Plus. The description and etc., all the information about me and the links etc. are provided in the description box below this particular video, right? And if you want to subscribe to Unacademy Plus, you can use my referral code, that is AKMSIBA, and this will give you a flat 10% off on your Unacademy Plus subscription. So with this, I would like to conclude the class. Thank you so much and have a good day. Bye bye.